As black people, we have been great actors since the beginning. America is completely racist and just mean us all ill will.
You know what's crazy? Hollywood will blacklist you faster than you can say Oscar nomination. And if you're black, the door doesn't just close, it slams shut and gets bolted from the inside. Today, we're exposing 20 black actors who were blacklisted from Hollywood. Some of these stories will shock you, some will break your heart, and some will make you realize that the entertainment industry is way darker than you ever imagined. 1. Monique.
I would like to thank the Academy for showing that it can be about the performance and not the politics.
Remember Monique, the incredibly talented comedian and actress who won an Oscar for her heartbreaking performance in Precious back in 2010? Well, her story is one of the most talked about blacklisting cases in recent Hollywood history. After winning that Academy Award, Monique's career should have skyrocketed, right? Instead, it crashed and burned. Here's what happened. Monique refused to play the Hollywood game. She wouldn't do an unpaid promotion for Precious during award season, and she stood her ground about being properly compensated for her work. Fast forward to 2018, and Monique called out Netflix, Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, and director Lee Daniels for what she described as being blackballed. She claimed that after she stood up for herself and demanded fair pay, these industry giants worked together to keep her out of major projects. The situation got so serious that Monique even sued Netflix for discrimination after they offered her significantly less money than other comedians for a comedy special. What makes this story particularly painful is that Monique wasn't asking for anything unreasonable. She simply wanted to be paid what she was worth, especially after winning Hollywood's highest honor. But instead of being celebrated for her talent and her Oscar win, she found herself on the outside looking in. Her phone stopped ringing and roles dried up almost overnight. It's a stark reminder that in Hollywood, speaking truth to power can cost you everything, even when you're at the top of your game. 2. Isaiah Washington.
To him about how I was feeling, I said, there's no way you're going to treat me like the B word or a P word or the F word. You can't treat me this way in front of our crew.
Isaiah Washington was riding high as Dr. Preston Burke on Grey's Anatomy, one of the biggest shows on television. Then, in 2007, everything came crashing down during one of the most controversial exits in television history. During a heated on-set argument, Washington allegedly used a homophobic slur directed at his co-star T.R. Knight. The incident sparked massive controversy and media attention. Despite issuing public apologies and attending counseling, Washington was fired from the show at the end of season 3. But here's where the blacklisting really kicked in. After leaving Grey's Anatomy, Washington found it nearly impossible to land another major role in Hollywood. For years, Washington struggled to find work. He spoke openly about being blacklisted, claiming that Hollywood had effectively ended his career over one incident, despite his efforts to make amends and grow from the situation. He wasn't asking for people to forget what happened, but he believed he deserved a chance at redemption. What's interesting is that Washington's career eventually found new life outside of mainstream Hollywood. He moved to Sierra Leone, appeared in international productions, and slowly rebuilt his reputation. In 2014, he even returned briefly to Grey's Anatomy for a guest appearance, which many saw as a form of redemption arc. But those lost years in the prime of his career tell a powerful story about how quickly Hollywood can shut its doors on you. Whether you believe the punishment fit the crime or not, there's no denying that Isaiah Washington's career trajectory changed dramatically after that incident, and it took years of work outside the Hollywood system to find his way back. 3. Stacey Dash.
We've had a president who is black, who gets most of his funding from the liberal elite in Hollywood. Yet there are not very many roles for people of color.
Stacey Dash became America's sweetheart playing Diane in the 1995 classic film Clueless. For years, she worked steadily in Hollywood, appearing in various TV shows and movies. Then something changed that would essentially end her mainstream Hollywood career: her political views. Dash became an outspoken conservative commentator, which in itself wouldn't necessarily be career-ending. However, some of her controversial statements alienated both Hollywood and many in the black community. She criticized Black History Month, spoke against the BET Awards, and made various political statements that many found offensive or contradictory, given her own career benefiting from these very platforms. Hollywood, which leans predominantly liberal, essentially closed its doors to Dash. She transitioned from acting to political commentary, appearing on Fox News and other conservative outlets. But even that relationship eventually soured. What's fascinating about Dash's story is that she later publicly apologized for many of her controversial statements, admitting she had been angry and seeking attention during that period of her life. The blacklisting of Stacey Dash raises interesting questions about political diversity in Hollywood and whether there's room for conservative voices, particularly black conservative voices, in the entertainment industry. Some argue that she had every right to express her political opinions without losing her career. Others believe her statements went beyond political opinion into territory that was genuinely harmful. Regardless of where you stand, there's no denying that once Dash became politically controversial, her acting career essentially disappeared, and she found herself on the outside of an industry she'd been part of for decades. 4. Dave Chappelle.
New white people, you can't scare these white people. I tried. Roll up on them, boo! The hell is wrong with you?
Now, Dave Chappelle's story is a bit different because he wasn't exactly blacklisted in the traditional sense, but hear me out. In 2005, at the height of his success with Chappelle's Show, Dave walked away from a $50 million contract with Comedy Central and essentially disappeared from Hollywood. Chappelle later explained that he felt the show was being taken in directions that made him uncomfortable, and he didn't like how some of his racial humor was being received. He felt that instead of helping people understand racial issues through comedy, his work was reinforcing stereotypes. The pressure from the network, the industry, and the sudden fame became too much. When Chappelle tried to return to stand-up comedy years later, he faced significant pushback from Hollywood. He'd broken the unwritten rule: you don't walk away from that kind of money and power. Comedy Central even held on to his show and continued to profit from reruns without properly compensating him. For years, Chappelle was essentially shut out of major Hollywood projects. What makes Chappelle's story unique is his eventual triumphant return through Netflix, where he's now one of the highest-paid comedians in the world. But those wilderness years, where Hollywood turned its back on one of the most brilliant comedic minds of our generation simply because he chose his mental health and artistic integrity over money, show how vindictive the industry can be. 5. Monique Coleman.
And then, and I feel safe to say this, Disney really broke my heart.
Remember Monique Coleman from High School Musical? She played Taylor McKessie in one of Disney's most successful franchises ever. The movies were massive hits, beloved by millions of kids worldwide. So naturally, Coleman's career took off after that, right? Wrong. Coleman has spoken about how difficult it was to find work after High School Musical ended. While some of her white co-stars like Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens transitioned into major Hollywood careers, Coleman found doors closing. She's been open about the challenges black actresses face in Hollywood, particularly the lack of diverse roles and the tendency to typecast. Unlike a traditional blacklisting situation, Coleman's experience represents something perhaps even more insidious: the subtle racism of simply not being considered for roles. She wasn't banned from Hollywood for doing something wrong. She just couldn't get cast because Hollywood didn't know what to do with a talented black actress who didn't fit their narrow stereotypes. Coleman eventually carved out a successful career for herself as a producer, director, and advocate for youth empowerment. She serves as the first ever UN Youth Champion and has built an impressive career outside of traditional acting. But the fact remains that someone who was part of such a massively successful franchise should have had more opportunities in mainstream Hollywood. Her story highlights how blacklisting doesn't always mean you did something to deserve it. 6. Orlando Brown.
Disney Channel star is busted again right here in Las Vegas. Police tell us that Orlando Brown was arrested Monday for narcotics possession.
Orlando Brown was once one of Disney Channel's brightest stars, known for his role in That's So Raven. Kids everywhere loved him, and he seemed destined for long-term success. Then everything fell apart in a very public and tragic way. Brown's struggles with mental health and substance abuse became tabloid fodder. His erratic behavior, bizarre interviews, and multiple arrests essentially made him unemployable in Hollywood. While some might argue this isn't traditional blacklisting, the entertainment industry definitely turned its back on Brown during his darkest moments, rather than offering the help and support he clearly needed. What makes Brown's story particularly heartbreaking is how it highlights Hollywood's treatment of child stars, especially black child stars. The industry builds these young talents up, profits from their work during their formative years, and then abandons them when they struggle with the very pressures that fame created. Brown needed intervention, therapy, and support, but instead he got mockery and isolation. Recently, there have been signs that Brown is getting his life back on track. He's been more stable in interviews and has talked about wanting to resurrect his career. But those lost years and Hollywood's complete abandonment of someone who clearly needed help tell a disturbing story about how disposable the industry considers people once they're no longer profitable or convenient. 7. Gabrielle Union.
Gabrielle Union's abrupt departure from America's Got Talent. Celebrities and others are showing their support for the actress, who claims the work environment was toxic and racist.
Gabrielle Union has had a successful Hollywood career, but in 2019, she experienced firsthand what happens when you speak up about racism and toxic workplace culture. After just one season as a judge on America's Got Talent, Union was suddenly fired. Union later revealed that she had repeatedly flagged problematic behavior on set, including racist jokes, racist performances that made it through to air, and comments about her hairstyles being too black. Rather than addressing these concerns, NBC and the show's producers allegedly retaliated by firing her. What's remarkable about Union's story is that she didn't back down. She took her story public, filed complaints with California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing, and refused to be silenced. The backlash was immediate, with many in the industry supporting her, while others tried to paint her as difficult to work with, that age-old tactic used to discredit women, especially black women, who speak up. Union's case eventually resulted in NBC conducting an investigation, though many felt the results were disappointing and didn't lead to significant change. What Union's experience shows is that even established, successful black actresses aren't safe from retaliation when they point out racism. The difficult label gets attached quickly, and suddenly opportunities dry up. 8. Terrence Howard.
Go out and get a little swerve on. Don't you think she'd be well within her rights? It's karma, baby.
Terrence Howard was nominated for an Oscar for Hustle and Flow and seemed poised for superstardom. He landed the lead role in Empire, which became a massive hit for Fox. But Howard's journey has been marked by controversy and allegations that have significantly impacted his career. Multiple accusations of domestic violence over the years damaged Howard's reputation in Hollywood. Several women, including ex-wives, came forward with allegations of abuse. While Howard has denied or contested many of these claims, the accumulation of accusations created a toxic reputation that made him increasingly difficult to cast in major projects. Additionally, Howard has made various controversial statements over the years, including bizarre claims about mathematics and physics that left people questioning his judgment. His difficult reputation on set, including his well-publicized dispute with Marvel that led to him being replaced in the Iron Man franchise by Don Cheadle, further cemented his status as someone Hollywood increasingly didn't want to work with. What's complex about Howard's situation is separating the legitimate concerns about his alleged behavior from the question of whether he's been given due process or permanently judged for allegations. Hollywood often picks and chooses who gets second chances and who doesn't, and there's an argument to be made that black men are held to different standards than their white counterparts. However, when multiple people come forward with similar allegations, it becomes harder to dismiss them as mere blacklisting. 9. Raven-Simonet.
I'm not an African American, I'm an American.
I felt like the entire internet exploded and threw my name in the garbage.
Raven-Simonet went from child star on The Cosby Show to Disney Channel icon with That's So Raven. She seemed to have the perfect trajectory for continued success. Then she started giving interviews that would change how Hollywood and the public viewed her. In various interviews, Raven made statements that alienated many in the black community. She said she didn't want to be labeled as African American, stated she wouldn't hire people with black-sounding names, and made other comments that were perceived as distancing herself from her racial identity. These statements sparked massive backlash and essentially made her persona non grata in much of black Hollywood. Her stint on The View as a co-host further complicated matters as she continued to make controversial statements about race, sexuality, and politics. While she was being authentic to her own views, those views didn't sit well with audiences or industry executives who felt she was out of touch. What's interesting about Raven's blacklisting is that it came primarily from her own community rather than from white Hollywood executives. This raises questions about authenticity, representation, and who gets to define what it means to be black in America. Should someone lose career opportunities because their views on race don't align with what the community expects? It's a complicated question without easy answers. Raven eventually found work again, rebooting That's So Raven with Raven's Home on Disney Channel, but her career never fully recovered the momentum it once had. 10. Columbus Short.
Columbus Short was once the sexy star of Scandal. The actor later admitted to struggles with substance abuse.
Columbus Short seemed to have it all. He was a talented actor and dancer, landing a major role on Shonda Rhimes' hit show Scandal as Harrison Wright. Then his personal life spiraled out of control in a very public way, leading to one of the most dramatic exits from a hit show in recent memory. Short's problems began with allegations of domestic violence, public altercations, substance abuse issues, and increasingly erratic behavior. In 2014, he left on Scandal after 3 seasons, and his character was written off the show. What followed was a series of arrests, legal troubles, and very public breakdowns that made Short essentially unemployable in Hollywood. Short has been open about his struggles with addiction and mental health issues. He's spoken about how the pressure of fame combined with personal demons led to his self-destruction. Unlike some blacklisting cases where an actor speaks out and faces retaliation, Short's situation was largely self-inflicted, though it raises important questions about Hollywood's support system for actors struggling with addiction and mental health. What's particularly sad about Short's story is the loss of potential. He was genuinely talented, both as an actor and a dancer, and Scandal was at the peak of its popularity. Had he been able to get his personal issues under control, there's no telling how far his career could have gone. Instead, Hollywood moved on without him, and Short became another cautionary tale of fame and addiction. His attempted comebacks have been largely unsuccessful, showing how unforgiving the industry can be once you've burned bridges, regardless of the underlying reasons for your behavior. 11. Tichina Arnold.
Knowing that I was losing out to certain jobs because of my complexion. And it was just something that, was, you just dealt with it. It was.
Tichina Arnold has been consistently working for decades, from Martin to Everybody Hates Chris to The Neighborhood. She's incredibly talented, funny, and beloved by audiences. Yet she's never quite broken through to the A-list status that her talent deserves. Why? Because Hollywood has a long history of undervaluing black actresses, particularly those in comedic roles. Arnold's situation represents a different kind of blacklisting, being perpetually overlooked rather than actively banned. She's the actress who's always the best friend, the supportive character, the comic relief, but never the lead in a major Hollywood film. This pattern affects countless talented black actresses who are good enough to work steadily, but never quite good enough in Hollywood's eyes to carry a major project. What makes Arnold's story frustrating is that she's proven time and again that she can deliver powerful performances. She's got range, charisma, and decades of experience. Yet opportunities that go to white actresses of similar talent levels simply don't come her way. It's not that she did anything wrong, it's that the industry has decided there's a ceiling for actresses like her. Arnold has spoken about these frustrations in interviews, though always diplomatically. She continues to work and has built an impressive career, but the question remains, why isn't she a household name in the same way that some of her white contemporaries are? The answer lies in Hollywood's systemic racism, which doesn't always manifest as obvious blacklisting, but rather as 1,000 small decisions that add up to limited opportunities for black talent. 12. Cat Williams.
I'm enjoying my motherfucking life. That's all I'm saying. I advise you to do the same. Do shit that make you happy. Go out and get you some white friends. Get you some white motherfucking friends.
Cat Williams is one of the most brilliant stand-up comedians of his generation. His comedy specials were events. His tours sold out arenas, and his performances were legendary. Then something happened. Williams became increasingly vocal about what he saw as corruption and manipulation in the entertainment industry. And suddenly, his career hit unprecedented turbulence. Williams had multiple run-ins with the law, bizarre public incidents, and erratic behavior that seemed designed to discredit him. But Williams himself has claimed that much of this was orchestrated to silence him because he was speaking out about powerful people in Hollywood. He's talked about the Illuminati, industry manipulation, and the price black comedians pay when they refuse to play the game. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like conspiracy theory territory, and maybe it is. But what's undeniable is that Williams went from being one of the hottest comedians in America to being essentially unemployable in mainstream Hollywood within a relatively short period. Major studios stopped calling, and he found himself relegated to smaller venues and independent projects. What's interesting about Williams is that he's never backed down. He's continued to speak his mind, even when it cost him opportunities. Like Dave Chappelle, he refused to compromise his integrity for Hollywood acceptance. And also, like Chappelle, he's managed to rebuild his career on his own terms, though it took years and he lost significant income and opportunities during his wilderness period. Whether you believe Williams' claims about why he was targeted or think his problems were entirely of his own making, there's no question that Hollywood turned its back on an immense talent during a period when he needed support, not isolation. 13. Mekhi Phifer.
I'm real simple. I just like to go to work, handle my business, and keep it moving. I'm not trying to play the whole game.
Remember Mekhi Phifer? He was everywhere in the late 90s and early 2000s. He starred on ER, appeared in major films like 8 Mile with Eminem, and seemed destined for long-term A-list status. Then, he quietly disappeared from major Hollywood productions. Phifer's career decline wasn't due to scandal or controversy. Instead, he represents the more insidious form of blacklisting, simply being forgotten. As Hollywood moved through different trends and priorities, Phifer found himself getting fewer and fewer calls for major roles. He's spoken about the challenges black actors face in maintaining career momentum, particularly when they're not being fed a steady diet of substantial roles. What happened to Pfeiffer has happened to countless talented black actors. They have a hot streak, then Hollywood moves on to the next thing, and suddenly they're fighting for scraps. Without the built-in advantages that white actors often have, like being considered for a wider range of roles or having better industry connections, black actors like Pfeiffer can go from star to whatever happened to remarkably quickly. Pfeiffer has continued to work steadily in television and smaller films, but his career trajectory should have been much bigger given his talent and early success. His story is a reminder that in Hollywood, staying power often has less to do with talent and more to do with an industry that doesn't invest in black actors the same way it does in white actors. It's not always about doing something wrong. Sometimes it's just about an industry that moves on quickly and doesn't look back, especially when it comes to black talent. 14. Janet Hubert.
I lost everything. Reputation. Everything.
Janet Hubert originated the role of Aunt Vivian on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, bringing depth, elegance, and strength to the character. Then, after 3 seasons, she was suddenly replaced, and her career in Hollywood essentially ended. For decades, the official story was that Hubert was difficult to work with. But the real story is much more complicated and painful. Hubert has said that she clashed with Will Smith over working conditions and contract negotiations. She was a new mother fighting for maternity leave and better pay, while Smith was the star with all the power. When she spoke up, she was labeled difficult and fired. What followed was decades of being blacklisted from Hollywood, unable to get work because the narrative around her was that she was problematic. The situation was made worse by years of public animosity between Hubert and the cast of Fresh Prince, particularly Smith. Hubert felt abandoned and betrayed, watching her career crumble while everyone else thrived. She spoke out repeatedly about what happened, but for years she was dismissed as bitter and jealous. It wasn't until 2020, during the Fresh Prince reunion special, that Hubert and Smith finally reconciled and had an honest conversation about what happened. Smith acknowledged that he was immature and insensitive at the time, and Hubert was able to share her side of the story with empathy and understanding. The reunion was healing, but it couldn't give Hubert back the decades of lost opportunities. 15. Jussie Smollett.
I did not do it to myself, and you must all know that. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect your decision. Jail time?
Jussie Smollett's story is one of the most controversial in recent Hollywood history. Smollett was a rising star on Empire, playing Jamal Lyon to critical acclaim. Then, in January 2019, everything changed when Smollett reported being the victim of a hate crime in Chicago. What initially appeared to be a horrifying, racist, and homophobic attack quickly unraveled. Chicago police concluded that Smollett had staged the attack himself, leading to charges of filing a false police report. The case became a media circus, dividing public opinion and eventually resulting in Smollett being written out of Empire. Whether you believe Smollett's version of events or the prosecution's case, there's no question that his Hollywood career effectively ended. He went from a promising young actor with a major role on a hit show to being essentially unemployable in the industry. Major studios and networks want nothing to do with the controversy surrounding him. What makes Smollett's case complex is that it involves questions of truth, justice, and whether someone can be rehabilitated after such a public scandal. Some believe he's being unfairly persecuted, others believe he got what he deserved. Regardless of personal opinion, the blacklisting was swift and absolute. Smollett's story raises important questions about redemption in Hollywood. The industry has forgiven other actors for various transgressions, sometimes very quickly. But in Smollett's case, the combination of the false report allegations, the public nature of the scandal, and the political implications made him too toxic for Hollywood to touch. 16. Cheryl Lee Ralph.
You are not a JoJo Seabass.
You mean JoJo Siwa?
Cheryl Lee Ralph has been working in Hollywood for over 40 years. She originated the role of Dina Jones in the original Broadway production of Dreamgirls, has appeared in countless films and TV shows, and is an incredibly talented actress and singer. Yet, for most of her career, she's been criminally underutilized and overlooked by Hollywood. Ralph's story isn't about a dramatic blacklisting incident. Instead, it's about the quiet, persistent racism that keeps talented black actresses from reaching the heights their talent deserves. Ralph has worked steadily, but until recently, she was never given the recognition or opportunities that white actresses of similar talent received. What's remarkable about Ralph's story is the ending. In 2022, at age 65, Ralph finally won her first Emmy for her role in Abbott Elementary. Her emotional acceptance speech, where she sang and celebrated not just her own victory, but the recognition of all black actresses who've been overlooked, was one of the most powerful moments in recent awards show history. Ralph's decades-long journey shows that blacklisting doesn't always mean you stop working. Sometimes it means working twice as hard for half the recognition. It means being consistently excellent and still being passed over for awards, leading roles, and major opportunities. It means watching less talented white actresses get chances that should have been yours. The happy ending to Ralph's story is that she's finally getting her flowers, but it came after 40 years of being undervalued. How many other talented black actresses never got their Abbott Elementary moment? How much incredible work did the world miss out on because Hollywood couldn't see past its own prejudices? Ralph's story is both inspiring and heartbreaking, a reminder of resilience, but also of injustice. 17. Flex Alexander.
My name is Mr. Mustard. Is that why you got on all yellow? No, that's because I'm from Detroit. You should see me in my stank paint.
Flex Alexander seemed to have a bright future in Hollywood. He starred in his own sitcom, One-on-One, which ran for 5 successful seasons. He appeared in films and other TV shows. Then, seemingly overnight, major opportunities dried up, and Alexander found himself struggling to maintain the career momentum he'd built. Alexander's situation represents a common experience for black actors, being hot for a moment, then finding themselves unable to break through to the next level. After One-on-One ended, Alexander struggled to land another leading role. He's spoken about the challenges black actors face in Hollywood, particularly the limited number of roles available and the tendency for the industry to move on quickly from black talent. What makes Alexander's story particularly frustrating is that he proved he could carry a successful show for 5 seasons. He had the charisma, the comedy chops, and the audience appeal. Yet that success didn't translate into the kind of long-term career opportunities that white actors with similar hit shows often receive. Alexander has continued to work in smaller projects and has built a life outside of Hollywood, including a gospel music career. He seems at peace with where his career landed, but his story raises questions about what could have been if Hollywood valued black leading men the way it values white leading men. 18. Malik Yoba.
I had people tell me if I would have known XYZ, I would have never supported you.
Malik Yoba was the star of New York Undercover, one of the first police dramas to feature black and Latino leads. The show was groundbreaking and successful, and Yoba seemed poised for major stardom. Then his career trajectory flattened, and he never quite achieved the A-list status his early success suggested. Like many actors on this list, Yoba has continued to work steadily in television and film, but always in supporting roles rather than as a leading man. He's spoken about the challenges black actors face in Hollywood and has been an advocate for more diverse storytelling and better opportunities for actors of color. In recent years, Yoba's personal life has generated controversy, including his advocacy for transgender rights and revelations about his own sexuality that sparked debate and backlash in some communities. While this shouldn't affect his ability to work, Hollywood's discomfort with complexity and controversy likely hasn't helped his career prospects. Yoba's story is another example of the what happened to phenomenon that affects so many talented black actors. They break through with a successful project, then find themselves unable to replicate that success or build on it in meaningful ways. It's not always because they lack talent or work ethic. It's because Hollywood has a limited imagination when it comes to black actors and often fails to invest in their long-term career development. 19. Omar Epps.
It's reverse racism, man. 1995, coon.
What?
Omar Epps had an impressive run in the 90s and early 2000s, starring in films like Juice, Higher Learning, and Love and Basketball, and later landing a major role on House. He should have become one of Hollywood's leading men, but instead, his career followed a more typical pattern for black actors: initial success followed by a slow fade into supporting roles. Epps has worked consistently throughout his career, which is itself an achievement in Hollywood. But there's a noticeable difference between the trajectory of his career and those of white actors who came up at the same time with similar levels of success. While they often moved into bigger films, more prestigious projects, and continued leading roles, Epps found himself increasingly cast in supporting parts. This isn't because Epps lacks talent or professionalism. By all accounts, he's a dedicated actor who takes his craft seriously. The issue is systemic. Hollywood invests more heavily in developing and maintaining the careers of white actors while allowing black actors to drift into smaller roles as they age. Epps has spoken about these industry dynamics in interviews, always diplomatically but honestly. He's made peace with his career and continues to find meaningful work, but his story serves as yet another example of how Hollywood's racism isn't always about dramatic blacklisting incidents. Sometimes it's just about 1,000 small decisions that add up to limited opportunities, a gradual fading rather than a sudden end, but a loss of potential nonetheless. 20. Aunjanue Ellis.
Got high blood pressure than big girl. It's hot as hell up in here.
It's November, Odette.
Can't nobody be hot in November.
Aunjanue Ellis is one of the most talented actresses working today, yet her name recognition doesn't match her incredible body of work. She's delivered powerhouse performances in films like If Beale Street Could Talk, When They See Us, and King Richard, for which she finally received her first Oscar nomination at age 53. But here's the frustrating part. Ellis should have been a household name decades ago. Ellis has been working in Hollywood since the mid-1990s, consistently delivering brilliant performances that critics rave about, but that somehow never translate into the kind of career momentum and opportunities that white actresses with similar acclaim receive. She's appeared in prestigious projects, worked with renowned directors, and earned critical praise throughout her career. Yet she's spent most of that time being Hollywood's best-kept secret rather than the star she deserves to be. What makes Ellis's situation particularly infuriating is that she's done everything right. She's trained at prestigious institutions, honed her craft on stage and screen, and delivered consistently excellent work. She hasn't been involved in scandals or controversies. She's professional, talented, and respected by everyone who works with her. So why hasn't she been given the leading roles, the major film franchises, or the visibility that her talent warrants? The answer is the same one that applies to so many entries on this list: Hollywood's systemic racism and ageism, particularly toward black women. Ellis represents a generation of incredibly talented black actresses who've been systematically overlooked for major opportunities. What do you think? Did I miss anyone who should have been on this list? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this video informative, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video because these stories need to be told.